Hello and welcome everybody, I'm Barbarian and this is Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign DevDairy analyses. Today we're going to jump into DevDairy 5, DevDairy 6 and hopefully, if time allows, a DevDairy 7. If not, then that will follow with DevDairy 8 together, so I will connect those two. We will see how long they go. The DevDairies are all quite interesting, they're all quite in-depth and they explain how the new game is going to work. Now, if you have never heard of Knights of Honor, then let me tell you one thing. Knights of Honor was released in 2004 and it has aged like fine wine. What I mean by that is that many of the gameplay ideas that were present in Knights of Honor were incredibly satisfying and are definitely a really good fundament for new gameplay mechanics, for further developed gameplay mechanics. Knights of Honor, if I were to describe it, is essentially a dynasty simulator that does include the state, but still goes on and goes into the idea of being characters, a family, if you will. There are so many characters in your court that interact with you, but they are not interacting with you in a degree that Crusader Kings does it. This is a more arcadey, more casual conquest and family simulator, if you will. It was a lot of fun back in the day, and let me just showcase here how this game acted. Essentially, it was single player only when it comes to the real-time battles, and yes, there are real-time battles. They were not single player only, you could play them in multiplayer, and as you can see here, this was the map, and my god, honestly, it just looks so nice to look at. It's just so comfortable to look at. There are many things, of course, that aren't really historically accurate. I mean, you know, for example, Spain over here. At the end of the day, this was an early 2000s game. Have you seen Crusader Kings 1? All of the games did it like this. Rome Total War literally had the ancient Egyptians fight during the period in which, of course, Egypt was a Hellenized country. All of those things were quite normal. They are correcting these at the moment, but if we load into some here, and let's just start with the best start, in my opinion, Bohemia in 1200 is really nice because you have to find your freedom, you have to become independent of Germany, and that is something that is quite doable, but it also just showcases how the map looks. Look at this. In my opinion, out of all the games that we have that applied a 2D map, this is the most gorgeous one that you have. Then you also have this level, of course. Don't talk to me, dear boys. Oh my god, the sound effects are quite loud. Now, as you can see here, so many castles. Every castle is one province, and that is essentially all that you need to know for the moment. We have our dear commander right over here, and the people are ready to rebel, it seems, but without looking into any of what you're seeing right now, and it looks quite interesting, and honestly, I love this game. I might even do like a short video just showing how to play this game because it's so much damn fun. It's just such an exciting one. Let's jump into the first DevDairy, because of course that is what we're here for. I have covered previous DevDairies, check those out, link will probably be in the description. This one is about marshals and armies. Now, you know what, before we actually jump into this one, let's just jump into Knights of Honor, because this one is a marshal. Marshals in Knights of Honor were able to recruit troops. They were always on the map. I just recruited a peasant unit here, for example, and they also had a food wagon, a food supply that you had to replenish, and if you didn't, they would run out of food and they would not do well. Now, as you can see, I can command them to go somewhere, and you can literally see the guy marching behind my commander. Now let me just turn this down a bit, because I hear these voices, and honestly, they're so iconic. I love to hear them. But what you can do, and we're gonna do this in a way that isn't very healthy. This does not, you know, this isn't very successful. But I will essentially go, and I will fall into the province that is down here, that belongs to Germany. I'm now in the safe province of Austria and Germany. I love the fact that they say that. What I want to do is, let me just see, did this work? No, I just have to declare war, I guess, manually. So, I'm going to click on Germany, and then we're going to proclaim independence. We are now at war, of course. It's essentially a war for independence, right? And I'm going to go and I'm going to pillage. That is one of the many things that a marshal can do. You can see I have many more units that would be possible. If the marshal has experience, he gets battle tactics that make him better at, you know, anything really. They can embark anywhere. They can, for example, fight better. They can plunder better. All that sort of stuff is possible. And you see this over here. If an enemy army were to occur and were to attack me, then we would have a battle here that I could theoretically fight myself. Now, that being said, let's jump out of this. Let's take a look at what marshals will be doing in Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign. In Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign, of course, warfare has been, you know, overhauled quite a bit. Marshals play a very specific and important part in the game, and that's to lead armies across provinces, much like you just saw there, fight enemy forces, and paint the political map with your kingdom colors. As conquest and expansion were arguably amongst the most important aspects of the original game, we have made sure to encapsulate what marshals were and expand on their concept further. Each knight in the royal court may lead a number of squads depending on his class and specialization. That is a huge change that I think was already talked about in one of the early DevDairies, because in the old Knights of Honor here, I could recruit, for example, a new knight. I don't have the money right now, but I can use a family member. I can recruit a new knight, and unless I name them a marshal, if I go into any of the other classes that you can see, unless I name them a marshal, they will not be on the map, and they will not be able to actually command any units. In Knights of Honor 2, that will change. Everybody can command units, but of course, if you have a marshal, he can do it quite a bit better. The ability to lead troops is unlocked for these classes by certain skills, in specific all military ones. So if your trusty merchant learns infantry tactics, this means he can now muster up a hefty army and replace the quill with a sword at any time. That is of course especially convenient when you have to engage with smaller armies, so for example enemy merchants or, you know, rebels and so on and so forth. More on rebels of course in Diaries 7. However, marshals possess a major advantage to these classes, and that's the ability to control a larger number of squads being individual units. For the time being, marshals can lead up to 9 squads, which is 3 more than what other classes may have within their retinues. Kings and crusaders also have an additional bonus on the number of squads they can control, making encounters against their forces particularly challenging. An additional military advantage of marshals is the skills the class can acquire. Specifically, marshals can learn more military-related skills than the other classes. These mostly focus on aspects of warfare such as siegecraft, archery, and leadership, and usually grant additional battle tactics and actions that knights of other classes wouldn't normally gain. As marshal are natural-born leaders, they also tend to inspire their troops more, which results in higher morale and more epic battles. So essentially, you can go into a battle with one big martial army or with, for example, 2 smaller armies, and they might do similarly well, but of course having one marshal, you know, is cheaper, and it makes it so that you have one excellent commander instead of everything spread out between 2 people. It's important to note that not every skill is necessarily locked to marshals, as other knights may also end up possessing them in one way or another. And this is what now comes here. I mentioned this as well. Marshals, of course, can already do this in this game. Let me just quickly go to this marshal. Let's just fast forward this a bit. You can see it's real time. It is free movement. There are no provinces, so to speak. I mean, obviously this is a province, but you can move on to every single pixel, I guess. There's no tiles, that sort of stuff. And there you go. The plundering has been successful. Now, I haven't leveled up, but if I were to plunder one more time, I believe that I will be leveling up. So let's just do that. Essentially, once we level up, I can decide between many skills. Knights of Honor, again, a game that in my opinion aged like fine wine, and just, it made me sad. It made me very sad that there was no successor, you know, no sequel. Of course, the company dissolved, and now the original founders have created Black Sea Games, which is developing this one under, no, Germany, please stay away. I just need to level up. There you go. Now that I have this skill, I have a choice between all of those, and I can choose. You can see level 1, level 2, level 3, so I can choose then to invest wholly in one skill, or I can go and pick up a lot of skills. Now in Knights of Honor 1, I will just give it away. A very strong ability was this camp, because it made you so infinitely stronger. You know, when camping out, started firing arrows. I don't think we can defeat them, even in a camp. I just want to see how it goes, honestly. But essentially, I will not lead this fight. But essentially, these camps, look at that, a 125% bonus. It is incredible. And I think I might even be winning this battle, or winning slightly, but we'll see how it goes. At the end of the day, these abilities determined who and how your battle would go. And there you go, we actually won. They had too overpowered, these camps, but you know, that's just balancing issues. What I want to talk about is that these, of course, only were meant for marshals, because nobody else was even able to lead an army. What they did for Knights of Honor 2, or what they are going to do, obviously, you know, I haven't played the game, I haven't seen the game, but what they are going to do is they are going to give these skills to other classes as well, but every class has a bit of a different take on it. So this is the interesting thing. Let's take archery as an example. For all classes, having the skill means ranged squads under their command gain higher attack values. However, if a marshal owns the same skill, he has the added benefit of recruiting archers with an increased squad size, which of course means more troops, meaning more damage, etc, etc. However, oh no, sorry. We can even go further and look at spies, which instead have their own unique take on archery, both on and off the battlefield. As an example, they might have a higher chance to snipe enemy marshals on the battlefield, which is huge, because of course, that's a huge, you know, opposing force there to the enemy morale, or obtain an affinity for arranging hunting incidents on foreign grounds. How great is that? If you have a spy that has the same trait as someone that is a marshal, he completely interprets it in a different way and has a different draw from it. Now again, Knights of Honor is more of an arcade map conquering game than it is anything roleplay wise. Of course, roleplay plays a role, but not in the way that it does in, I would argue, in Crusader Kings. So this is really neat to mix up how you play and how you play the military game. I'm a huge fan of this. I think this is a really good design decision, and it makes me all the more excited for the game. Now let's continue onwards here. In general, the resources resources which are required to produce troops include food and population, which are gathered in each town, just like the original game. I showed that off earlier. Additionally, some squads may also require specific goods produced or imported within your kingdom. A typical example are horses which are needed for producing all sorts of cavalry. Essentially, in this game, when you had something prepared, be it via a building or be it via resources, and you could build troops there in that particular city, then you could do this only in this particular city. For example, I might not be able to recruit archers in all cities because I might not have training grounds in all cities. Let's take a look at our other city here, Moravia. Yeah, there you go. We cannot build archers. Meaning that these units are region-specific, building-specific, and resource-specific. I really like that about the game as well because it made conquering regions actually really meaningful, but alternatively, you could have also gone and instead of conquering different regions, you can just trade with those people. And if you trade with those people, you get the resources as well and can then recruit those armies. So that's still the case in Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign. Very, very positive about that. As we favor smaller squad sizes and more dynamic battles, so essentially they are not that huge, but they have similar numbers to the original game. I think that's a good choice. I haven't showed off on any of the real-time strategy battles yet in these Dev Diary videos, but don't worry about them too much. We are going to get to that when we get to that part in the Dev Diaries as well, I would argue. However, players will be able to control larger numbers of squads, so expect to see significantly bigger battles compared to the original game. Very exciting. Hiring marshals costs gold, and members of the royal family, of course, are free. You know, when they join your court being this thing right here, they still exist. I mean, you know, my son still exists, but he's not in the active royal court. But essentially, you hire them and they are free. But other than that, if you hire a knight, that could be a marshal, players must also pay his wage, which increases progressively with each additional knight of the same type recruited within the court. In other words, having too many knights of the same class is really costly. That's a balancing here, I think, that can work. I have no opinion on the balancing. You know, I say that for CK3 all the time as well. I haven't seen the game, I haven't played the game, I cannot tell you whether it is balanced, of course. All recruited armies take up some amount of food upkeep from the kingdom's global food reserves. Mercenary squads prefer more gold though. Now the thing about that is that in Knights of Honor, essentially, there was no global food reserve sort of thing. If a city gets besieged, it's all happening in the city. This is the local city storage of food, and then this is the food carriage of this character's army. If I were to put this character, let's just give him some archers right here. If I were to put them out here, they would start using up this food wagon. I always like this mechanic. I can't imagine a global mechanic. I mean, not directly. I think it is interesting. I think it's a good one because at the end of the day, there are, of course, supply routes to a certain degree at the very least. So a global supply would make sense, but I always like the idea that if I go into a city and I take a grain from their storage, if right after an enemy army comes and I leave that city, then that city will be very fast to capitulate, seeing as they don't have that much food in their storage. But we're going to see how that works out in the actual game. Squads now also have their own level. Each level increases various squad statistics such as attack, defense, stamina, and morale. You want to make sure specific quads are kept alive for longer periods. Of course, that is a big factor here, and that is always interesting to see. And if I'm not mistaken, I might be mistaken, but I could have sworn that squads in Knights of Honor also had that, but apparently not. You know, honestly, it doesn't really matter. I mean, this game is so old at this point, I forgot many of the mechanics, of course, that were involved and that weren't involved, and I'll be honest with you, much of my gameplay in Knights of Honor, you know, at the end of the day, once I realized it boiled down to me getting that camp ability because it's just so damn good. But there were other really cool abilities. I mean, just look at this, that less food consumption, really, really cool. Armies morale against different religion. That is, you know, it's just so interesting. You can specialize a general towards a certain front, so to speak. Then you have martial gains experience more quickly, etc. So I'm really excited to see what they came up with in terms of skills for, you know, Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign. Now, this is this Dev Diary. It's a very interesting one. The link will be in the description. But now let's move on to Dev Diary number 6, Cultures, because this is also a very interesting one. And I want to point one thing out because I had to Google this. I did not actually know this. This sword is inspired. So like either that is that person, but I highly doubt it. It's just, you know, essentially this person wants to be the legendary person. I forgot the name, but this sword is inspired by the legendary, you know, not ancient, by a legendary original Muslim general, so to speak. It's a really neat sword. Look at that. Almost, I was like, does this look like an anime sword? And then I Googled it and I was like, oh god, it might look like one, but it is a real sword. So here we go. Now let's jump into Dev Diary 6 Cultures. If I am not mistaken, and I do not believe that I am, and there is a chance, of course, that I might be, but I don't think I am mistaken. If I'm not mistaken, Knights of Honor 1 did not have cultures. If you took over a city, and I'm going to try to do that here in a second, but if you took over a city, essentially the population would of course say, you know what, we don't really like you, why are you here? But they wouldn't say that because they're a different culture. They would say that because you are a new conqueror, a conqueror that they aren't accustomed to and that they don't really enjoy. And should I can't actually, if I were to do this, I can't build these, I don't think. I don't think that I can build these because this city isn't able to build any of those, right? There are siege engines and everything, and again, whatever you build in terms of, you know, you're building an army is also reflected in your actual visual army composition. But you know what? I'm just gonna I don't know whether I like any of those.
Has called for a crusade.
Oh, the Pope has called for a crusade. Good for him. Let's go to Austria. Let's try to take this. I don't know whether we can pull it off, but I will do my best. We just plundered them as well. Everybody, of course, mad over here. Just look at how cute these little villages look. I think when it comes to map aesthetics, Black Sea Games as they are today, and I don't know whether they are the same map designers as back in the day, but they just had it down. The new map looks so good as well. Can we win this, I wonder? The city is very poorly defended. I think there's a good chance that... No, I don't know. It doesn't look very... Yeah, I'm about to say. Oh, and he got a prison. Well, don't worry about it. I'm gonna abandon you, my dear friend. And then put my kingdom power down. Listen, when you conquer it, there would be a modifier essentially in this right here. And this was not a very successful campaign. But there would be a modifier right here that would essentially say, hey, I'm very unhappy because you are not my rightful king. And you can see that here, right here, my people are also war exhausted, even at home, all becoming a bit rebellious. Now, that being said... Now, there is an actual culture-specific point of view on this. When we talk about cultures, there's one really important thing to keep in mind. Diversity. We live in a world with a rich variety of cultures, every one of which has its own specific history, songs, food, and even mannerisms. All this is valid for the Middle Ages as well, and thus it becomes the foundation of how cultures work in Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign. We didn't just start with the big cultures like Arabic or Nordic, and the state of there were Berbers in Northern Africa. That was, of course, something that most games don't really reflect any of those intricacies. Crusader Kings 3 will now do it, but Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign doing it is really, really neat. I mean, Total War doesn't even do it, they don't really care. But we're aiming to include unique tribes of certain regions too. The Sanhaja, Zenata, Tuareg, the small cultures that compose the big, widely known cultural groups. Same goes for the European cultures. Yes, they are the French, but also the Occitans, the Normans, and other cultures that are classified in the Latin group. I will mention, by the way, I love these portraits. In the year 2020, it is incredibly difficult to, of course, compete with the Colossus that is Crusader Kings 3, where they have the budget to go and say, you know what, we're gonna have fully animated 3D portraits. But every single of these portraits looks believable. It doesn't look like a potato. All of these look highly characteristic. None of these are like, you know, oh, they all look the same. All of these are highly specific, and I love them. I think when it comes to portraits, you either gotta go all the way like Crusader Kings 3, or you gotta do this. Something that is as characteristically determined as possible. Just look at these different faces, these different expressions. They actually look alive and they look interesting. I'm very excited to see that in action. It's not enough to conquer territories to paint the map in Knights of Honor 2. One occupied province might bleed your kingdom dry in the wrong circumstances, from your armies to your economy. Here our culture spread system comes into play, and this is a really interesting one. It's based on how civilization's culture evolves, diversifies, and disappears throughout history. This was mostly a slow and continuous process, but sometimes it could have been forceful, with one culture assimilating another with stark change in the population's lifestyle, like religious conversions. In Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign, this process works like this. The culture of one province or kingdom is constantly affecting its neighboring provinces. More provinces with the same culture are bordering one province with different cultures, have a greater conversion influence, meaning this province could be ripe for conquering by providing less problems when assimilating into your kingdom. I hope that you can hear the Knights of Honor music in the background, by the way. It's a great soundtrack. Let me just see. Oh, that's the wrong one. If you can't hear, I'm gonna... It's very quiet right now, isn't it? Let's just do it like this. Might be a bit loud, but you know what? Let's just try that out. Yeah, this sounds like a middle ground to me. So, in Knights of Honor 2, this process works like this. The culture of one province or kingdom is constantly affecting its neighboring provinces, and more provinces with the same culture, all bordering one province with a different culture, have a greater conversion influence, meaning this province could be ripe for conquest early, and I think I already read that. I want to take a look at this map, because I will tell you, again, in the year 2020, the first year where we get the Colossus Crusader Kings 3, it is difficult to compete, but I will tell you, this map is gorgeous. Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign, there was an earlier dev diary, let me see if I can find it. Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign is taking all the right steps in creating an absolutely gorgeous map that is, of course, a considerably different map from what we have and from what we're looking at in Crusader Kings, because you can move in real time through these provinces. This is the map that I was looking for. Look at this gorgeous, gorgeous map. This is Asia Minor, if you aren't recognizing it. It looks absolutely beautiful. And I have to say, mad respect for Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign for creating a map that looks this impressive when it comes to, you know, the general comparison here. Because this isn't just like, you know, one county, two counties. This is a direct province that, you know, you have to take a look at in terms of your armies marching through it. There's small settlements that you can go up to and plunder. All those things have to be implemented and have to be thought of in this map, and I think they're doing a great job. I will also say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I think it's 18 and then 19 up here. That's about double from what we have in Knights of Honor, isn't it? take this, there you go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. And no, oh, I never noticed that. Oh my god, there's nothing on the Balears. I did not remember that. But as you can see right here, it's a much larger map than what we have back in the day, and you cannot directly compare it to any of the other games because you are to Crusader Kings, for example, because you are effectively, immediately, and directly walking through it. You know, this is different from go from province A to B. This in between is something that your army actually walks in Knights of Honor. So I really love the map, I love the makeup, and you can see right here, this is the map of, I believe, like 1250, maybe something like this. It seems like we have a small Granada right here, we have Portugal, we have Castile, we have Aragon, and then Navarra, I assume. All of that stuff still hanging around, and we see cultures here. I assume this is essentially Visigothic, or rather the children of the Visigothic culture, right? So Castilian and whatnot. And then down here we would have Andalusian. I think all of those are interesting. At least I hope that is what this map shows. I'm not quite certain because there's nothing directly addressing this, but beautiful, beautiful map. And you know what? It's probably not even that bad for you, but I'm gonna, there you go. Did I just make it louder? I gotta check how loud I can have this in the future. But either way, these are some ground rules to that, of course. Cultures from the same group influence each other easier, while those from different ones have a hard time taking over one another. If a Catalan king decides to conquer a Castilian province, the closely related cultures will allow for smoother conquest in that aspect. Matters would be even easier if the player made an effort to expand his kingdom's influence to those particular neighbors, by taking advantage of the other tools we prepared for faster cultural conversion. More on that in a future dev diary. But the Andalusians will have a hard time spreading their culture over the Catalans, and vice versa, even if the territories held by them are bigger, better, stronger. Cultures play a noticeable role when it comes to visuals as well. We often felt pulled between two choices. Choice A, to fully capture the visual nuance of all well-documented cultures, leaving a number of cultures with less than ideal visualization, bordering on Narnia and not history. Or choice B, to compile known elements from cultures in a major cultural group in order to achieve combined a visual style that would be most appropriate. We choose the latter. So there will be a lot of diversity, a lot of intricacy there, but of course, you know, when you don't have a direct source, you're kind of going to try and melt it together so that you get a proper normal result. And I gotta tell you, this mosque, this art of this mosque looks very, very nice. Again, all of the map art, we're going to see that in the next diary, looks really, really neat, all things considered. In Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign, you can see the iconic castles of Western Europe and also the traditional wooden stave churches of the freshly Christianized Nordic lands. There's less emphasis on the so-called ambient life, that means villages, region-specific animals, and flying fish, although there are some unique aspects there as well, and more on what's really important, like the army. So they focus on what is important, and then put the rest a bit into the background. I think that's fine. We have to budget, we have to, you know, look at the situation, what can we implement into the game in a reasonable time frame. Game development isn't cheap, and it's a very lengthy process, so I think this is a good oriented or well-oriented decision. We wanted each culture group to feel distinctive units when possible, both from a visual and gameplay standpoint, to ensure the lasting feeling of, yes, I am a Nordic king, and this is my fearsome Nordic army. The Europeans have their heavier army, while the steppe armies are relying on equipment that doesn't hinder their superior swiftness. The real sight to behold, however, are the special units, like the Mongol heavy lancers riding against the Novgorodian boyars, or camel riders walking the sands of North Africa, side by side with the Mamluk cavalry. Riding at the front of each army is the Marshal, whose model we're pushing to be the most iconic of them all. Look at these. These look really neat. Another crucial piece of visual information we wanted to get just right was accurate names and nobility titles. For each culture, we filled pools with names, sometimes numbering in the thousands, and the majority of which belong to real medieval people. Naturally, we wanted to emphasize this even further, and what better way to do that than to include starting real-life dynasties. And I can't read anymore, but we are pretty sure that the Doge of Venice won't ever be called I can't read that. Trevitko, I hope. My god, I pray. As long as it is the Republic, as long as the Republic keeps its original culture. What I'm hoping for here is, and they're hinting towards this, they're saying it's possible, but what they're saying is essentially you can change your religion and you can change your culture. Those are things that were not a part of Knights of Honor. I would absolutely love that. All of this work is really oriented towards one goal, to immerse you in the medieval setting of Knights of Honor 2 through the unique cultures of that time. We hope you enjoyed and have a great time playing in this unique era the way you want to, in a backdrop that is immersive and engaging. I'm a really big fan of what they did here, since this is a real-time strategy game. The way they interact with culture, you know, being a fluid thing, conquering things that are similar to you or conquering things that, you know, are surrounded by your culture, I think all of that is an adequate representation of real-life history, except, you know, essentially created for real-time strategy games such as this one. Now let's move to Dev Diary 7 Rebellions, and then we kind of all three in this video. This one is the most interesting to me because it is a really, really intricate system. Let me just see here if we can get the Bohemians of this world to rebel here in my name. Or rather, against me, I should say. They are very, very angry at me. A 10% rebellion chance right there. Can I have peace with Germany, by the way? Is that a possibility, my friend? What does he want? My vassal, well, you know what, we're back to vassal, that's okay, we raided Austria a bit and now we're here. I just want to see that people rebel against me. I don't think I can do anything about it. I guess I should have stayed at war, I was just afraid of being conquered. But my people don't appear to be rising up. Now, the thing about rebellions was that Knights of Honor, and I feel like I'm shouting against the music, man, this is annoying myself that I have to constantly change it a bit, but honestly, even if it's too quiet, I think that's better than it being too loud. Rebellions in Knights of Honor. This is why I was saying that they aged like wine, or rather the game aged like wine. They were one of the most freestyled, open-ended sort of systems that I have ever seen in a rebellion system. When there is a rebellion in Crusader Kings 2, you're looking at someone formally declaring war against you, and then you having to defeat their armies, and then that war's over, or they defeat you and they just get whatever they want. Rebels in Knights of Honor were so amazing, and even then, of course, in comparison to what we're going to see in this Dev Diary, Knights of Honor just was rudimentary in comparison to this, but it was fascinating, because you would get this message, foreign rebels have crossed our border. Essentially, if there was a rebellion in a nearby province, and they plundered there, and then they, you know, were like, you know what, let's plunder somewhere else, they would come into your province and keep plundering. They were legendary rebel commanders that were simply strong enough to oppose even a normal nation's army. It was incredibly exciting, it was fun. They would go and plunder settlements, and then ultimately, of course, go and try to besiege your own town. There could be nationalist rebels that would make it so that, you know, a new kingdom was created, or that a province went back to a different kingdom. For example, a province that goes from the, you know, Cordoba, the Sultanate, or the Caliphate of Cordoba, that then went over again to, for example, Catalonia. All of those things were really well done for a game, and I want to stress this, of 2004. They threw something against the wall that, in my opinion, was one of the best rebel systems that I have seen in the entirety. I think for Crusader Kings 3, for example, their new rebel system is outstanding for Crusader Kings 3. But for a real-time strategy game, the Knights of Honor rebel system was absolutely amazing. Rebels weren't just a nuisance that you had to wipe out, that you had to mop up. Sometimes they were an inter-realm thing. They were a thing that bothered you, that you could ignore for a while, but they would grow stronger with every settlement that they would pillage. It was incredibly exciting. And they are working on that in Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign, and I can only tell you, I have a really good reason to be incredibly excited about this game, because again, Knights of Honor had excellent systems that then never made it out of Knights of Honor because the company was no longer that company. And now that this one is back, let's dive into rebellions. This time we will look into stability, revolt risk, rebellious population, and rebellions, the final stage of a population's uproar. Stability and revolt risk are two elements competing with each other that represent how content a kingdom's population are. There are many factors, some local to specific provinces, others regional or even global for a kingdom. On a global scale, the easy but not cheap steps to reduce the tension are to increase crown authority, a very important parameter of each kingdom we will discuss later on, and decrease taxes. Some problems can be pretty difficult to tackle once created, like too high war exhaustion built over time, or hunger and starvation amongst the people. There are some factors you cannot even really control, for example, recent death of your king. You saw a bit of the war exhaustion, a bit of the anger right over here. This is the kingdom power. I don't quite know when they say crown authority, I don't quite know how that works. I assume it is a further developed system than the kingdom power. Kingdom power makes it so that just in general people will be not as happy. You can see it right here, -5. That gives us a bit of a risk of a rebellion already as it stands. If I wanted to upgrade this, I think it goes with, yeah, there you go, money and what I would call piety. I think they just called it, yeah, Kingdom's Piety, and then here Kingdom's Books. So this is essentially how you level up Marshals, for example, that sort of stuff. But all of that stuff has an impact on how your provinces behave. Now, they have a lot of food, so they are not starving or anything. There are no high taxes on them. You know what? And I honestly, I'm looking at it. I forgot it. How would I?
Your goal.
Right, here it is. There you go. Double taxes, war taxes. You know what? I'm gonna make everybody real mad. I'm not at war, so I can't do war taxes, but I certainly can make people very unhappy about the tax rate. That is a kingdom-wide thing. I would really like it if it was like province-based, but again, really cool starting position here. A really nice system to kick off how essentially your population interacts with you. On a local level, there's much more you can do to prevent a crisis, mainly providing establishments like building and districts that increase the happiness and local authority, as well as assigning a governor whose class and skills provide positive effects. Thus, even if the overall state in your kingdom is not too good, some of your provinces may remain more obedient than others. The opposite is true as well. Some provinces may be more problematic, and here the usual wrongdoers are religious and cultural tension, when the majority of the population in the region differs with your kingdom in those aspects. Also, rebellions that are already underway and any rebel presence in a province or its neighbors can increase revolt risk too. So, as we spoke in earlier Dev Diaries, it is very important which strategies a player chooses and how much care they spend on cultural and religious conversion of the population, influence of the kingdom, and how fast they will expand. Nobody in the right mind can look at this map and tell me it doesn't look beautiful. So this is Lisbon, and as you can see, there's two armies here. This is, I assume, an army either of Lisbon or Loyalists. I can't quite tell. I think this is the banner, like it's white and blue, right? This is the banner of Portugal. And then we have the rebels. You can see the commanders. You can see the individual units walking behind them. You can see this settlement was pillaged. I assume this one is pillaged or being pillaged right now. There's a battle over here. It might be... No, it is a siege. You can see the Onaga right there. The map vision, the map aesthetics, the map awareness, the way that this team understands how to make a map look good is outstanding. I'll be honest with you, and again, you can't avoid this, comparison, so I'm going to be the first one to draw it. I'm going to make this comparison. Crusader Kings 3 has a much more detailed map, because that is how Crusader Kings plays. It's not a real-time strategy game. Crusader Kings is a grand strategy game. They are very, very close to one another, especially in this case, but they're not quite the same. But I will tell you one thing. When it comes to aesthetics, like this one, the map of Crusader Kings 3, when you look at it with the holdings on top of it, no streets, no sprawl, no, interesting sort of stuff going on. They have tremendous, just for the record, Crusader Kings 3, they have tremendous map design when it comes to forests, for example, but this looks amazing. Honestly, I just gotta tell you, I'm stunned. I love what they are doing in Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign. It is very impressive to me. And especially it all looks alive. You have all these villages, you have the roads, you have everything going on. Very, very excited. Now, let's continue here. We didn't want to make the rebellion simply as a punishing mechanic, but to provide the player with many choices, and to achieve that we needed to provide them with time to react and a clear visual representation. So what we added is rebellious population. These are generally the people unsatisfied by a rulership. You can see that right here with the black-red symbol here. These are rebellious population. How fast they grow in a province depends on the revolt risk, but even if its value is high, it will take some time for them to multiply and take actions. Thus, watchful players can react and turn the tides. As an economy effect, the rebellious population is inefficient. It does not help in new construction, refuses to pay tax, and won't join the army. As more of your people turn red, chances for them to act increase, and the actions they take become more dire. Initially, they can migrate to nearby provinces or reinforce ongoing rebellions. Only if the tension continues to rise, unchecked, can they start a rebellion of their own. You never know what exactly when this will happen, but leave the masses unsatisfied for a long period, and it surely will. You never know when exactly this will happen. There you guys. Sorry, I sort of misread that. A wise ruler must always expect rebellions, though, even if everything looks perfect. Some special events and sometimes foreign intervention, especially from those sneaky spies, might cause a rebel problem within your seemingly stable kingdom. Single missteps might make your knights go rogue, for example, a cleric unable to accept the change of a kingdom's religion, and rise in your royal dungeon might escalate. Sometimes you might just be unfortunate. For example, crusaders may decide to go rogue while passing through a kingdom, or rebel armies that formed in a neighboring kingdom could decide to pay you a visit. We're touching on a topic here that gets me really, really happy about this game, yet again. Crusades in Knights of Honor are the best implementation of crusades that I've seen in my life. The Pope would ask a country, hey, would you like to send one of your generals, one of your marshals, to go down there and lead a crusade? If you say yes, they become an AI-led army that is fully equipped and starts to go down. They go by boat, they can walk, sometimes they drop out and they pillage. And then when they, if they do indeed get to Jerusalem, isn't that hilarious? Jerusalem is a vassal of Cyprus. Actually, that's fitting. Yeah, that works out. But essentially, they would come down here, they would pillage, and you, as the person focused by the crusade, have a time to respond. But again, that crusade won't be the last one. They had such a cool mechanic because it wasn't just unit spam. It wasn't just, you doing your all-powerful moves. It was actually an autonomous device that worked. As the player down here, you could possibly be targeted by a crusade, one time too often, your armies are on the other side of the world, and then you get overthrown. And by the way, look at the Phantom, it's expanding into Greece. I love it, I really do. But that aside, I love to see that, and I love the fact that again, is expanded in Knights of Honor 2 Sovereign as well. For example, oh no, we already looked at that. That's why we created more cohesive features set around rebellions themselves. Rebellions are a larger structure that includes occupied provinces, zones of operation, and of course the rebel armies, this time with a hierarchy. They always have one rebel leader, who controls the strongest army and is proclaimed king if the rebels claim independence and form a new kingdom. Second in command are the generals, also leading strong armies, and able to take control of the rebellion if the initial leader dies. Finally, we have minor rebel armies, which do not have a leader and are initially smaller. What rebels do at their core is still similar to Knights of Honor. They cause havoc by pillaging settlements and occupying towns, but now rebel armies can reinforce each other and act together. Wasn't a thing at all in Knights of Honor. They were all independent, they did super cool stuff, but they all did their own stuff. Once a rebellion gets a considerable strength and holds provinces for a period of time, they either form a new kingdom or restore a destroyed one, or join a nearby kingdom they are sympathetic to. From all that, some possible strategies emerge. Firstly, time is of the essence. Since rebellions grow in strength, number of armies and new generals can emerge. A player can strike them fast or take his time to prepare well and try to outgrow the danger. Secondly, there are choices on which armies to attack and when. Picking on the smaller armies reduces the rebellion strength and the damage it does, and is subsequently much easier to do. Fighting the leader directly may result in the immediate end of a rebellion, and thus all its armies will disperse, but usually it is hardest to do. You also plan to include other non-military ways to deal with rebels and possibly even benefit from them, if you can meet their demands and send them towards your enemies. Oh, listen, this is a dream come true. One way is, arming rebel leaders you have captured in the royal dungeons. Since they remain rebels and not strictly your army, such actions are not considered as an act of war from your kingdom, and players can use such means as a cunning and effective part of their strategy to weaken enemies or even gain new territories. Here we have Badajoz. There is a rebellion going on. This is a loyalist rebellion of some sort. This is a pillaging army. I don't know what sort of army it is though. It might be just a normal enemy. And this is a peasant army. So a peasant rebellion. Just look at this. Look at these, man. This is just a beautiful, beautiful map. But yeah, look at this. Essentially, you know, there is a lot of rebellion going on in this province. They are not having a good time. A special type of rebellion, and those you could benefit most from, are the loyalists, so that would be this, for example. Such rebellions can be formed in many ways. They can emerge without your direct control if you have a strong influence in foreign lands and have a high rebel risk of your own. Loyal provinces are occupied by an enemy, people that love their king and nation and are ready to risk their lives defending it. Oh, and now this city isn't... Oh, this city is occupied, I believe. This is a rebel flag, right? Is this a peasant rebellion having it occupied and the loyalists are trying to free it? I can't quite tell, but it's something like that, I believe. You can also turn enemy knights to your loyalist rebels in various ways, for example bribing a foreign marshal to fight against his unworthy ruler. Loyalists are also not such renegades as normal rebels. They do not attack the kingdom they are loyal to and its allies, nor pillage their settlements. You can even fight side by side with loyalists, though you'll be unable to directly control their armies. Once the time for independence comes, they always join the kingdom they are loyal to or form it once again, if it has been previously eliminated. Leaders and generals can join the royal court respectively. Very, very cool. Another thing we wanted to reinforce is providing incentives for players to fight against rebels in the foreign lands of their friends and good neighbors. Your armies grow more experienced in the battles they undertake, you get the gold these rebels have pillaged, relations with their attacked kingdoms improves since you help them with a threat. You lose the tension in your own neighboring provinces since rebels nearby can cause it, even if they are not within your kingdom. So essentially, rebellion can spread like wildfire. Finally, you don't want immensely strong rebellions growing near you anyway, since their armies might march towards you as well. Let me know what you think about this particular system in the comments, but Knights of Honor was, in my opinion, groundbreaking when it comes to rebels, and sadly we never saw that mechanic picked up ever again. No game did it as well as Knights of Honor, and that is something that you can quote me on. And I'm very excited to see Knights of Honor 2, what they are doing, you know, that is just absolutely exciting to me. Look at this beautiful map, by the way. You had relations, right? Whether, for example, we have war, we have a trade deal, that sort of stuff. What else we got? We got religions. We got, right, there was just one Islam, essentially, right, in the religions. That's how they did it back in the day. You have all these different unit types, of course. They also are all very differently, very uniquely looking. You have all these building types. I mean, I haven't even talked about the buildings. My god, so many buildings in this game. What a game. Honestly, what a damn game. Again, let me absolutely know what you think. This is a dream come true. I love the work that they're putting in. I'm very positive about the work because I think they are picking up the right cornerstones of Knights of Honor and implementing them in an even better way. Very, very excited about that. But with that, we are at the end of this, and I want to thank the members of the channel that are making videos such as this one possible, namely the Barons, Achilles, Know-How, Charlie, Eterna, Falling Phoenix, Rex Romanorum, Jacob, the Musialago, Dan, Florian, MFV, Mitchell, Aaron, Stefan, and Snywolf. Then, of course, also the Counts, Lachlan, Kazen, Wombit, Thomas, and Shifty, and last but not least, the absolutely beautiful Dukes, Eric, Kiriana, Goodfield, Nathan, Jack, Kenneth, and Lex. So thank you all for tuning in. Later, alligator.